Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Consortium of Indo-Pacific Researchers. I'm Indu Saxena, Chief Operation Officer and the Senior Fellow at the Consortium. Today's webinar is titled, and we are going to discuss on this one about the Gaza and Israel conflict. And it's basically focused on rebuilding Gaza, a path to lasting peace. For this pertinent discussions, we have the stellar panel from the region. And before diving into the substance, let me introduce our stellar panel today, who will walk through us a very complex dynamic of war and peace in the Middle East. We have Dr. Hayat Alvi. Dr. Alvi is an associate professor in the National Security Affairs Department of U.S. Naval War College in Rhode Island. She served as the Director of International Studies at Arcadia University and taught political science at the American University in Egypt, Cairo, Egypt. She's an expert in security and strategic studies and covers the Middle East, North Africa, South Asia, and Islamic studies. She is consistently featured in esteemed international journals and magazines. Additionally, she actively contributes to discussions on electronic media globally. Welcome, Dr. Alvi. We have Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. He is a member of Indian Foreign Service. He has served in the Indian missions in Cote d'Ivoire, Bangladesh, Mongolia, USA, Russia, Sweden, and Nigeria, Libya, and Jordan. In the Ministry of External Affairs, he worked in the Economic West Asia Department and the North Africa and the Consular Division. He also served as Director General, Joint Secretary for the Gulf and Hajj divisions in the Ministry of External Affairs, New Delhi. Thereafter, Mr. Trigunayat worked as a Deputy Chief of Mission in the rank of Ambassador in the Embassy of India, Moscow. Prior to his superannuation, he served as Ambassador of India to Jordan and Libya and High Commissioner to Malta. He is a prolific writer and an analyst on West Asia issues. Welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ambassador Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry. He served as a member of Foreign Service of Pakistan for 37 years, rising to the rank of the Foreign Secretary of Pakistan for over 3 years from December 2013 to March 2017. Mr. Chaudhry's last diplomatic assignment was an ambassador of Pakistan to the United States of America. He also served as ambassador of Pakistan to the Netherlands and Foreign Office spokesperson and deputy permanent representatives of Pakistan to the United Nations in New York. As Director General of Relations with South Asia, he remained closely associated with India-Pakistan peace process. He has authored 2 books and numerous research articles. His recent book is a memoir, Diplomatic Footprints, that discuss the intricacies of foreign policy making in Pakistan. Ambassador Chaudhry holds Masters in International Relations from Tufts University and a first-class Bachelor of Science from Punjab. Welcome, Mr. Chaudhry, to this discussion. I have my colleague and friend, Mr. Rachelle Abboud. She's a PhD, pursuing her PhD in political science from Rutgers University. And before handing over to Rachelle to leading this discussion, I would like to mention that views presented here are personal, should not be constituted to any organization's affiliations. Thank you, and welcome you all here. Over to you, Rachelle.
Thank you, Indu, for that nice introduction. It's nice to be with you all here today, and welcome. Thanks for joining us, and thank you to our audience who's listening in. Like Indu mentioned, my name is Rachelle Abboud. I'm a grant writer for a local nonprofit. I'm also a PhD candidate at Rutgers University. So let's start. After more than 15 months of a brutal war that has left more than 1,200 Israelis and over 48,000 Palestinians dead, the Gaza Strip is facing yet another uphill battle regarding the fate of its internally displaced population and the endless piles of rubble that surrounds them. On March 4th, Cairo will be hosting an Emergency Arab League summit to discuss Gaza's reconstruction plans in an effort to counter Trump's controversial Gaza Riviera proposal. However, the path to reconstruction is fraught with challenges and could be a long way off, as we are already seeing obstacles to the three-phase ceasefire deal struck last month. The rebuilding of a place that has over 92% of its housing units and 95% of its hospitals destroyed could take decades, and as estimated by the UN, almost around $50 billion to rebuild. Arab leaders believe they have an alternative plan to the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, but will the Trump administration and Israel be swayed? More importantly, will the reconstruction of Gaza pave the way for a two-state solution? So I would like to start with, I guess we'll start with Dr. Hayat Alvi. How do you see this plan playing out, this back and forth in the current political climate that we are seeing in this new world order, as I would describe it?
Okay, well, good morning, and thank you for inviting me to participate here. It's a very complicated question and an even more complicated answer, but I'll begin by talking in general about conflict resolution, the process of real conflict resolution, and that requires a good faith, impartial, third-party role. And as we can see with the Gaza Trump Riviera video that went out last week, that is clearly not showing that kind of, in my view, impartiality and good faith, seeking justice and security and peace for both parties, Palestinian side as well as the Israeli side. And having to deal with the reconstruction and humanitarian assistance in Gaza, which has already been blocked on the Israeli side, and here I'm talking specifically about the Netanyahu administration, that in itself is not showing a good faith reconstruction, peace, and security moving ahead for the Palestinian side. Then we have a lot of violence and infractions going on in the West Bank as well. So this is not really a true conflict resolution process. And for the American administration, the Trump administration, to produce and disseminate that obscene video last week also does not show a good faith on the part of the third party, pardon me, the third party role of the United States, which in the past has been a very positive role, starting with the Camp David Accords with the Carter administration in the Egyptian-Israeli peace process, 1978 to 79. So the signs, the messages, the signaling we're getting, and I'm reading this in social media as well, is not really showing a balanced approach. And I'll close by saying for this answer, a lot of what we see in the way the second Trump administration is handling this reflects in some aspects how the previous Trump administration, 2016, approached the Doha Accords that were with the Taliban and sidestepped the legitimate Afghan government at the time. But I would go as far as to say that that Doha Accords process was far more authentic and sincere, and I put that in quotes, compared to what we're seeing with the case of Gaza and the Palestinians.
Thank you, Doctor. I'll move on to Ambassador Anil for comments and answers to this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I fully agree with what Dr. Hayat said. But just to put it that when Taliban Accord was there USA was directly involved in suffering. But in Gaza, it is looking at something as a real estate project. And in my view, it is also continuation of his first term approach to the deal of the century, which he had proposed, which only looked at it from a purely transactional perspective and economic. So now also, he wanted a ceasefire to happen before he entered the office, and he threatened both sides. I mean, not only the Hamas, but also Netanyahu, and asked him that he wanted ceasefire. So he got it on the 19th of January, that ceasefire, which was a good thing, which everybody has been wanting, trying for a time. But it appeared to me that as if it was just to please President Trump, that the both sides agreed. And now we are looking at that the first phase is over, and nobody is talking about entering into the second phase. Instead, what we are looking at is some kind of an extension during the Ramadan period. Unfortunately and ironically, in this part of the world which we are talking about, Ramadan period tends to be the most violent period in the past several years, if you have seen it, instead of being a peaceful period. And so a small thing, a violation at the Al-Aqsa Mosque could just blow it away. So it's quite possible. Secondly, there is a very major difference, trust apart. There is a very major difference in approach. In fact, when this war started on October 7 and October 23rd, when the Israelis went in through the land route, I had written an article and I said, perhaps Gaza will be Zone D. I mean, as you know, the whole of Palestine, West Bank, and this is divided into A, B, C. So that's what they're looking at. Displacement of Palestinians or the Gazans has been a pet project of Netanyahu for quite some time. It is not the first time that they're talking about. In my view, also, I mean, I'm not privy to what happened between him and President Trump when he was rewarded by a visit to DC, being the third leader. It was easy for President Trump to say that, being a real estate man, that I'll develop it. Had he gone and said that this will be developed for the Palestinians and the Gazans, then there wouldn't be any problem. But here you're looking at the displacing all the people who have been already displaced many times over. So I think that we are not looking at any kind of a lasting peace. It is not possible in the region, and that this kind of a situation that is happening because Hamas rejects the idea of a non-Palestinian solution. A non-Palestinian solution is also not possible because they are themselves very divided people. So which is what has benefited Netanyahu for a very long time, who has basically taken full advantage of this kind of a division. So even if today the Hamas agrees to that there would be a Palestinian solution, means the PLO comes in and takes over and runs the place. I doubt very much that Netanyahu has openly said, or the Israeli government, that they won't even like the PLO to come and or PLA to come and take over. So they don't want. On the other hand, the Hamas says that there would be no foreign forces. Now, without the foreign forces, how do you ensure that there is no further terrorism, there is no extremism, and this kinds of thing? So we are looking at two approaches which are poles apart as far as the markers of both sides are concerned. And therefore, we don't see anything. On the other hand, now, the one thing that this war has done is basically put the Arabs on the map. Because they have been so far, pro forma support to the Palestinian cause has been going on. There has been a Palestinian fatigue, so to say, in my view, especially from the region. But with this 15-month-old war, where Israel has not been able to convincingly win, I believe that the Arab countries have been forced to take up this cause in a very, very rapid manner, I think so, which was very clearly evident when they came up with this proposal that they are going to have an Arab solution, that there will be $20 billion available for reconstruction, that they are going to have the Arab League. And President Trump also backed up. He said that this was my recommendation. So we know that it is a very, very difficult kind of a situation. But until and unless the Israelis make up their mind, very often I ask them, you don't want a one-state solution, you don't want a two-state solution, what do you want? Do you want the status quo to continue forever? It's already 7,500 odd years gone by. So I think that is for the, but as you know, the majority of the Palestinian people want this phase two negotiations to continue. As the release of remaining 59 hostages or the bodies, whatever is there, more and more Palestinian prisoners to be exchanged. And whether it will be a temporary ceasefire, whether it will be opportunistic ceasefire, we'll have to see. Of course, supporting any kind of a terror act is not what the civilized world would do. On the other hand, we need to see in a larger context, global context. And that is, in my view, is what I see is that during this global disorder, the middle powers are also defying the international law like never before. So you can say that it is a 4Ds kind of a thing, which I say there's a denial of the problem, the existence of the problem, defiance of the international law, disorder, and then following destruction. Not only here, it's happening in different parts of the world. And so I think that this is a very, very peculiar situation, and both sides have been changing goalposts. They are not sure exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to proceed. In the process, innocent people suffer on both sides and Palestinians more. So I'll leave it there and then I'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'll hand it over now to Ambassador Aizaz for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Indu, Saxena, and Rachelle, and also the consortium for putting it together. I largely agree with the two comments made. And I'll, in my 5 minutes, touch only on 3 dimensions. One, humanitarian, second, political, and third, reconstruction. On the humanitarian side, I think everyone knows that this has been an unprecedented genocide-like situation, ethnic cleansing too, and that has really saddened the whole world. And we can see that the people almost all across the world have spoken, particularly in the West, in the US, in Europe. They have come out in large numbers to protest. The governments in those countries may not have spoken that harshly, but I think the people have spoken. The second is the political. I think we don't see any signs of conflict resolutions. The conflict is still there, so there is no settlement of the issue. So the chances are that the agitation will continue, and the matter will remain unresolved. Israel has been opposed to a settlement that the whole world had preferred, which was two-state solution. There are countless UN resolutions and other calls for a two-state solution, which Likud party of Netanyahu has consistently opposed, at least since 1978. So that two-state solution doesn't seem to be in sight. Instead, the conflict seems to be now expanding to even larger dimensions, because we have seen a map circulated on the social media account of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel, of Greater Israel, which shows some parts of neighboring Arab countries as part of Israel. Then we also seen a Zionist map, which shows the Greater Israeli to be from the Nile to Euphrates. So these are highly provocative ideas which have been floated. And now we also see tensions going up between Israel and Iran for the last 2 years. And that also remains unsettled. Israel would probably like
I didn't understand that.
Would probably like Iran to engage Iran in a sort of warlike situation, and would probably want US also engaged there. But I think neither the US nor Iran wants to engage in any war at this time. So that means that this conflict will continue to simmer. Of course, Iran has been weakened because Hezbollah, Hamas, Alvi regime is gone. So Iran may feel defensive, but Iran is still a potent force. So that seeds of political conflict in the region still are there and remain unsettled. The third dimension is reconstruction or rebuilding, which is your topic for discussion. I see that even the ceasefire, which had 3 phases, just 1 phase has been completed. Even the second and third phase do not seem to be, to hold water. It may not go through. We can see that already Israel has started bombing areas of Gaza. That, I think, ceasefire may not hold. We can see resumption of bombings and killings. We also see that the support that Israel is getting from US in particular is ubiquitous, is unquestioned, and some of the European countries also. So that has emboldened Netanyahu's regime to do what it wants to do. It feels no impunity from the rest of the world on what kind of atrocities it is committing. The Arabs are also in a very difficult spot, but initially they were just paying lip service and looking at how the situation will be resolved. But with Donald Trump making suggestions and signals that some of these people could be moved out to other Arab countries, naturally they had to scramble into action. So they have been unanimous in saying that, one, these people should not be displaced from their homes, and second, that Arab countries are not ready to accept them. And I think I understand their viewpoint, because that would mean that sort of conflict will sort of proliferate, will expand into other countries, and that nobody wants. And in any case, Palestinians have a right to stay in their own lands. Why should they leave? So we see that from every angle, despite all these killings, despite all these atrocities, the issue remains unsettled, and we'll see how it goes. But I also agree with Ambassador Anil's point that this is part of the bigger picture, the disorder in balance of power that the world has seen. So UN General Assembly, UN Security Council can pass as many resolutions as they like. But if a country doesn't want to implement, there's nothing that you can do in this state of disarray that the world is in. So it's not as happy, it's a very sad situation, in fact, but that's the bitter reality we have come to face. What we can do, I think we'll talk about it during question and answers, but I think I have some ideas on what each stakeholders can do. Thank you very much for now.
Thank you. So it sounds like everybody kind of described indirectly the actual crumbling of the rules-based order as we know it, and the crumbling of the region, and the upending of all the past efforts between, normalization efforts between some Arab states, for example, like Egypt and Jordan, with Israel. And that, as you mentioned, Ambassador, it put them in a very difficult spot. So how do you think moving forward, especially at the summit, how will they navigate this new space? And like, for example, Egypt and Jordan, will this affect their relationship with Israel and their funding from the United States moving forward? And how can they reconcile between these two hugely conflicting visions for Gaza? One that sees a reconstruction and one that sees ultimate displacement. And how can they maintain their status quo in that particular context of events? I'd open it to anybody who'd like to answer. Go ahead, Doctor.
I'll go ahead and just say, in my view, I see this as a vicious cycle. I don't really see how any country or regional or international player is going, and I include the United States in this, is going to kind of break out from this cycle unless something very dynamic happens. But if you kind of look at the pattern of how Gaza erupts and Israeli military incursions take place, and Gaza becomes rubble, and then there's reconstruction again, and then there's eruption again, then there's incursion again. It's a repeated cycle. I don't see a major change from that. Israel will always retaliate beyond the proportionality in international laws. And I find it difficult personally to believe that Hamas did not account for that in their calculation when they planned and carried out October 7th attacks. The leadership of Hamas claims that they did not anticipate such a reaction from Israel. And I scratch my head on that because you just look at the pattern of history whenever things like that happen. And granted that October 7th attacks were unprecedented in many ways, but still, whatever Hamas has done, the retaliation on the Israeli side has been way beyond proportional. So they should have anticipated a really, really vicious retaliation. And again, I personally see this as a constant cycle. I don't see a major change going ahead.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, if I may add, I mean, I think that when you look at it today, it looks as the situation is really very dire. But every war eventually comes to some kind of an end. That is also true. There could be cold, frozen conflicts. There could be ceasefires, occasional problems. And this, the Palestinians have seen it since 1948 at least, many times over. Now, going forward, I don't see that there is going to be any major problem between relations between Egypt and Israel or Jordan and Israel, who have the peace treaties with them. Similarly, the I2U2, you know that this is something which is also part of one of your questions. It has not seen any let-up. The collaboration between UAE and Israel has gone on. The UAE has not withdrawn its ambassador. It has been there, although the Turks and the others may have. So overall, it's continuing. And it's good also. You need some people to be able to talk to both sides. Egypt is playing a role of mediator along with Qatar. There have been problems. We see that in the last 15 months, so many times the ceasefire attempts have been made, discussions have been, but at both sides. What this war has also shown you is a repeat of Taliban in a way, that non-state actor is very, very difficult to defeat fully. It just not happen. And here, security methodology is not going to work. That is what we are looking at it. We have seen in Syria, we've seen in Afghanistan, we are seeing where the most powerful country could not defeat them for 20 years and had to leave. Now we're seeing here 15, 20 months, despite the decimation, none of them is out of the way. They are there very much playing a part. And what Israel wants is it doesn't want Hamas to be anywhere in the governing architecture. Now, with this war, of course, I mean, if you go by the various polls that have been conducted, it appears that the Hamas has gained in popularity. So if you were to conduct the elections today and you think that there should be some kind of a democracy of voices, you might get the Hamas back on the table. So this is a very, very peculiar situation. This is not acceptable to either the US or to the Israelis. So how do you get over that? That is going to be, that's why what Dr. Hayat is saying is the situation is looking extremely difficult. But I believe that if the Arab League, if the Arabs stand together, and Arab means including Iran, including the Turkey and other major countries, and the rest of the world, because everybody wants peace, everybody wants a two-state solution. if there is an international pressure, the ceasefire may hold. The hostages have to be out. The political prisoners have to be released. I mean, that is something that's the first step in this. But what we are looking at today is that both sides have these polar opposite positions, and they are not agreeing to it. Whether Hamas can be pressured by Qatar, of course, Qatar is one country, Egypt is another one, which can put pressure on them. And they have done it in the past when Qatar asked them to leave under the US pressure, leave Doha. So if that happens, at the same time, the US has to come out of a complete unconditional support and tell Israelis that, look, the civilian casualties are not acceptable. I mean, those are very important that you need to get on the table. And the Americans are on board saying that there should be a two-state solution, so they can't change. At the same time, they are simply looking at it from even if it was not a Rivera kind of a project, they have been looking at it from an economic perspective only, whereas it is a highly emotional thing for the Palestinians as well. So I think the change in approach is extremely important. And we hope that the Arab League resolution is not merely a resolution, it is an action point, that how it is they are going to proceed. And at least from the Palestinian side, there should be an acceptability so that you are able to tell tomorrow that the Israelis are not on board and are opposing everything. Then only you can put some pressure. But if there is a big statement, and then I heard that there were these Arab Gulf foreign ministers applying to go to the US and talk to Trump and everybody else, the administration, Witkoff plan, for example. I mean, he himself is a realistic guy. The Witkoff plan is there just to extend this proposal, but predicated on the release of the hostages. So, there are inbuilt contradictions in the proposals that have been made, and that is why they don't succeed. Thank you.
Well, if I may come in,
Yes.
I think Rachelle has rightly proposed that Gazans are up against two very difficult choices. Either they continue to get destroyed, or they displace themselves from their homes and go and live in alien lands or in other lands as aliens. It's like between the hard rock and the sea. So these choices, both choices, are very hard for them to accept. And there is not much that countries like Egypt and Jordan have so far been able to do, although they are the neighbors. But for them to open, let's say, Rafah crossing and let these people come in, Egypt is reluctant. Jordan fears that its demographic balance might change if it admits any more Palestinians. They already are hosting 3.5 million. So for every reason, every country, Arab country, has a reason for not accepting either of these two choices that have been given to the Gazans. You talked about US funding. I think US funding in any case is going to go away, except for Israel maybe. Egypt is still on the list, but I think even that will, because that's the policy that Trump administration has taken. I don't see that happening. If political solution can emerge somehow, money is not hard to find. I think there will be many countries, particularly Gulf countries, will be willing to provide money for reconstruction, but we are not there yet. We're still in the conflict zone, and that somehow is not ending. My fear is that the two-state solution is also no longer applicable, because one party, Israel, is not ready to accept that solution. They want only one solution. In fact, they are now talking of annexing West Bank. And as you must have heard, the US ambassador to United Nations has said that Israel has biblical rights to annex West Bank. And then you have the American ambassador to Israel saying that US will support if Israel were to annex West Bank. So if West Bank is annexed, what is the second state we are talking about? And Israel doesn't want Hamas to be anywhere in the administration of Gaza. So there is practically on ground, there is no two-state left. So all the countries of the world are actually hiding behind this argument. that let there be a two-state solution so that they can sit back and not take any further position, knowing well that this two-state solution is actually not going to be implemented. Israel is not ready to implement it, and the Palestinians are not in a position to get that in. So it's a no-win situation for the Gazans and for the Palestinians, unfortunately. And my worry is that the next stage is actually an accession of West Bank. And and as long as the US is ready to support Israel, and as long as the Europeans are ready to sit on the side because they are too busy with the Ukraine-Russia war, there is no resistance to them. And some things that Arab countries or Muslim countries perhaps or some other countries could have done has not been done. They haven't boycotted Israeli products, or they haven't recalled their ambassadors or nothing. I mean, they have not done taken any of those actions. So the message that goes to Israeli regime is that you can do whatever you like as long as you don't involve us. And it's the first time that Donald Trump's suggestion has involved the rest of the world, the Arab countries, that maybe these people can go somewhere else. Other than that, otherwise everybody was just sitting in their own places and watching and hoping that somehow solution will be formed. It's a very, very sad situation, especially for the Palestinians, because they're left high and dry with nobody to really sticking out their neck for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like we're in front of a very unprecedented situation in terms of like having all the cards on the table clearly for everyone to see. You said something about messaging and impunity. Israel is acting with ultimate impunity and has outright said that it rejects a two-state solution and a one-state solution. And the Arab countries have not leveraged their assets to kind of change, the course of things. They're kind of just sitting there complicit. So my next question would be, why would, and I'm scratching my head thinking about this, why would any of them invest in so much money, time, and effort to rebuild Gaza if they fully know that Israel and Hamas, or Israel and the Palestinians, might go at it again, right? Especially now with the possible annexation of the West Bank and the violence that's taken place there. Why would they invest so much money? Is it really an authentic plan, or is it something that they're trying to prop up as just a virtue signaling to kind of like stall Trump from displacing the Palestinians? And I mean, I don't know if he's even serious about displacing the Palestinians. I think Israel's more serious than Trump. Trump is very unpredictable in my eyes. He talks the talk and he changes his views every other second. But it's becoming more clear that yes, the displacement of Palestinians has become something that is, that could happen given all the attitudes surrounding the situation. So why would the Arabs invest in donating money or rebuilding Gaza? What do you think is the alternative agenda here? Is there something else going on besides helping just to reconstruct Gaza while knowing that Gaza could be destroyed while they are reconstructing it? Anybody?
Well, I'll start. My sense is that for Israel, the larger goal of creating a greater Israel looks to be within sight, within reach. They'll start with the West Bank, but they will leave very little choice with the Gazans as long as Hamas exists. And Hamas has not finished. This is what they wanted to. You remember even Donald Trump told the Israeli leadership, finish the job. So finish the job basically means finish Hamas. And since Israel itself has considerable Arab population, and if they take over Gaza, and there are Arab population, but there is no militant wing, there's no political activity to agitate against them, then they would be happy about it. They don't have to displace all of them. They just want to eliminate the militant leadership of the Palestinians. They could not do that to Hamas yet, but they have certainly considerably weakened both Hezbollah and Hamas. And I think they will continue to test their patience. They will continue to do these bombings, with intermittent ceasefires until their will breaks, until their leadership is eliminated, and they become placid citizens of Israel, a one-state solution. I think that's where it is headed. So Israel is part is not really in displacement. If displacement happens and Arabs open their borders, that's fine. But if it doesn't happen, its aim would still be to eliminate the leadership of Hamas, so that there is no challenge to Israeli authority, and Israel can then move on to claim a one-state solution. And if it is a de facto solution, probably it will hope that the whole world come to accept that. That seems to be the objective that Netanyahu has at this moment. And US will be ready to go by as long as this comes into play. I mean, the Hamas is finished, and there is no resistance left to Israel, and Israel can begin to expand its borders. It already taken Golan Heights and part of the buffer zone, and it can take a little bit more part of southern Lebanon and then West Bank. And I think if Hamas leadership is gone, that seems to be the dotted line that Netanyahu is working on. And I don't think he's finding much resistance to that.
Unfortunately, yes. Ambassador Anil.
Yeah, I think that looks to be thinking possibly and of Netanyahu. But at the same time, if we come to think of it, they are also afraid of a much bigger, larger Muslim population in a one-state solution. And that is precisely the reason that it has not moved on so far. And moreover, we have seen what happened during intifadas. We have seen that for the Palestinians, it is their existential issue for them. So that is not going to go away, even if de facto or de jure, whatever way you make a one-state solution. If they are going to be second-class citizens in their country, then there's going to be a problem. It will not be possible even to control by the army or the security methodology. So they want to probably displacement. It can happen. I mean, the thing is, but I doubt very much that it'll be so easy to displace all the 2 million people to other countries. Why do Arabs don't? You ask one question, why would anybody invest? It's easier to dispense with money than to own up a problem for yourself. So that is there basically that they do understand that the Palestinians have been wronged. They have stood all along. There's the Arab Peace Plan of 2002 that still is valid. But two-state solution, as it was envisaged in the beginning, is very unlikely to be achieved in any case. You know, at one time, 1948, the Palestinians had about 48% and 45%, 55%, roughly that much was the territory that was given. Today, Israel controls about 73 or 74% of the territory. So 67 borders, Jerusalem, all this has gone out of the window already. And there are these religious, emotional, the other kind of issues that also propel Palestinians to continue with their struggle. And this Hamas attack, one of the major objectives, in my view, was to recharge the Arab street with regard to the Palestinian cause, which was being forgotten. So the leadership had thought that, okay, we can continue with Israel, like Abraham Accords and others. They will continue to be there. And the Palestinian issue will, of course, not be raised. But this is something that is brought back. Today, Saudi Arabia is once again, the champion of the Palestinian cause. In the last few years, we have seen, I mean, there was a statement in September 23 by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman that it could be fast, normalization could be faster than you expect. I mean, that was one of the triggers for the October 7, I guess. So if Israel thinks really, and which is a plausible thinking that we should have them remove them, create more settlements, do everything. But at the same time, this has not brought them peace at all. So we are not looking for a peaceful region. And do you think that Israel has the capacity to reconstruct Gaza by itself or the places? So that is also again an issue. They will need the Arabs, and they'll have to find some kind of a modus vivendi with them. Now, what kind of a two-state solution will it be? One doesn't know. For many countries, yes, they take yes, there should be. It's a rhetoric statement. There should be two-state solution. It's true, but at the same time, there's no other option. I mean, I've discussed with so many Israelis and so many Palestinians, and I find that until and unless you have some kind of a dignified living for the Palestinians alongside the Israel, I doubt very much that we are looking at any kind of a peace in the region.
Thank you, Ambassador. Dr. Hayat, I'd like to also hear from you regarding my previous question, and also like if you can talk to us a little bit about, given all of this going on right now and the weakening of Hamas through this most recent war, and the efforts to want to reconstruct Gaza by the Arab leaders, Arab countries, who do you think will be governing right now in the enclaves of Gaza? I mean, we know that some semblance of governance is necessary to even move forward any reconstruction efforts. You need some kind of governance, some kind of leadership. Who do you think will be taking that up right now if we do get to that phase, which is phase 3 of reconstruction?
Sure, I'll address that. I think Dr. Indu had her hand up. Did you?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Indu, go ahead. Didn't see that.
It's okay. Thank you, Hayat. I just have the one question with Ambassador Trigunayat and one question for Ambassador Chaudhry. Ambassador Trigunayat, what role do you see for India if there is a plan for rebuilding and reconstruction? We know that India friend with Israel and also supports the two-state solution, and it's like we see the rebels and the debris. They are like that. If the stage third comes there, not with the money, maybe not with the capital. Do you see India's constructive role, sending the engineers and sending the human capital there? What is the Indian government's see is as an opportunity to work towards the like-minded partner? Next, if there is a truce and the peace process goes, and this also, if you will touch on the Russia-Ukraine too, I would be happy to listen it from you. Do you see any peacekeeping forces from India to put in the Ukraine or in the Gaza site, wherever they were UN in the mandate of United Nations? Ambassador Chaudhry, yeah, sure, please, you go ahead. Ambassador Chaudhry, that's I just want to ask you that President Trump is like has an aim to eradicate Hamas, and as we know that Palestinian cause was a long time ago, it was represented by PLA or PLO, that was Yasser Arafat when I was in my college and the senior high school. So we just heard the name, we just saw the Palestinian from a different perspective, the cause. And now we see the Hamas in the picture. So, and I just want to relate it, connect with the Taliban, how the non-state actors representing a country and looking the going forward and demanding the statehood, and who is the real representative for the Palestinian? How do you see if Hamas will go like the Taliban, will ask for the United Nations seats, will ask to sit in the middle of the countries? They are democratically elected people. So these are my questions, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Indu. In fact, as you know, that West Asia or Middle East is an extremely important extended neighbor of India. And anything that happens there has a direct impact on our own safety, security, and stability. And therefore, India has always followed that there should be a dialogue diplomacy, there should be peace, and to the extent possible, India has contributed to it also. As far as Gaza conflict is concerned, from the very beginning, there have been three-sided approach of India. Number one, we have to address the issue of terrorism. That is very important. Number two is that the humanitarian assistance and supplies must be sent uninterrupted. You cannot use starvation as a weapon. And number three, there should be reconstruction and two-state solution through mutual dialogue between two parties. We all know physically, I mean, all of us are aware about it. The only country in the world which can really bring the two sides to the table and has brought it in the past as well. We have seen the Oslo Accords, Camp David, and others. That is the United States of America. So if it starts playing the role of a peacemaker, an honest interlocutor, others can pitch in. We have seen that there have been parties and approaches, and because of which the peace has not been achieved. Israeli security is the primary concern for the United States. Whichever way you look at it, that is not going to be compromised by any administration, whether it is Trump or whether it is Biden or Clinton or Obama or anybody else. So that we are going to say that that's a non-negotiable thing. So as long as that is non-negotiable, then what do you get in return? So that is the position that the Americans can take and can bring about some kind of solution. Now, as far as the reconstruction of Gaza is concerned, I mean, we directly, as you know, that we do not recognize Hamas. We don't deal with them. We deal only with the Palestinian Authority. India is one of the biggest contributors to UNWRA, despite Israel disbanding it. We have been providing humanitarian assistance to Gaza all through from beginning itself. We have also been helping Palestinians in different ways, including the budgetary support. In fact, we built their embassy here in the United States, in New Delhi, and are looking after all their expenses as well. So we provide the budgetary support. We are giving thousands of scholarships to the Palestinians. So India stands with the Palestinians as far as their state is concerned and two-state solution is concerned, and is ready to facilitate to the extent it is possible. And in fact, if you know that India has always consistently voted against the settlements that have been extended by the Israelis. In bilateral meetings, we have informed them, and in international fora, we have opposed them. So that is the position. Now, coming to if there is a reconstruction, and if an international peacekeeping force, UN peacekeeping authorized by the United Nations, is asked, then India will have nothing to worry about. But if you expect that India will send by itself something, then I doubt very much it will not happen. Same thing applies in the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, Russia-Ukraine war is way off from being solved, but I believe that because President Trump, after before the Ukrainian thing, he had met the French president and the British prime minister. I believe that the Europeans, as a via media, to arrive at some kind of ceasefire, have agreed to provide some kind of a security guarantee to the Ukrainians instead of the United States openly going at the cost of they not joining the NATO. Now that's an opening for negotiations or talks with them. What happened on the tamasha that we witnessed on the TV between President Trump and J.D. Vance and Zelensky has put the guardrails against cooperation, direct cooperation. So the United States will stop most likely all its assistance to Ukraine. And then, in my view, I mean, that's my view personal, Crimea will remain part of Russia. Nothing is going to happen to that. It is possible that those four republics that Russia has annexed might be brought under some UN or some kind of an international peacekeeping forces, and they might need the international assistance, because until and unless you have that, Russia is not going to agree, and the US will take a different seat altogether. So Russia-Ukraine war, in my view, also is not at the end of it, right? We are not seeing its end so soon, until and unless the Americans and Europeans also patch up. We are looking at a different kind of a polling taking place in Europe at the moment as the Europe Summit. As you know, London, now they are going to meet in Brussels, coming out. So it's a very dynamic situation at the moment. But India has been one of the biggest peacekeeper contributors. So wherever it is necessary, we will be able to play our role. In Russia-Ukraine war, Prime Minister Modi has been met both the President Putin as well as President Zelensky, and we have offered our facilitation. We are not mediators. We don't have the capacity to mediate. So mediation can only be done when both sides are sensible and wanting to talk. If they're not wanting to talk, so you need a very superpower to enforce it. And in Gaza situation or in this situation, I think that it can be only enforced. It's very difficult to achieve it by simple negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. We're reaching the top of the hour, so I'd like to kind of conclude the discussion with final comments.
Rachelle, please.
Go ahead, Indu.
I'm sorry interrupting you. I just want, if Ambassador Chaudhry just want to say something on the question of Hamas and the Taliban representing and asking what the state of. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, your question is, who is the real representative of Palestinians? I think there is absolutely no doubt that it is the Palestinian Authority. They have been recognized as a state of Palestine in the United Nations General Assembly. They now have a seat there, in the OIC, in the Arab League, and we all have their ambassadors accredited to our country. Hamas emerged on the scene after winning the 2006 elections in Gaza, only in Gaza, and recently shot into fame because of the October 7, 2023 attack, of which people have now already mentioned, perhaps was a miscalculation. They weren't really expecting. They only wanted to stop the Arab-Israeli normalization process, which was gaining momentum. And they thought that Palestinian issue will be receded to the background completely. So they thought that they will take an action, there'll be some reactions, and finally things will settle down. It didn't settle down. And to their bad luck, now the US under Donald Trump is totally committed to supporting Israel. Hamas is, as of now, is a non-state actor. To the extent of ruling Gaza, but it is an elected representative of the Gazan people. So it's a very strange kind of sort of status that they have. But for all practical purposes, it is the PLA which at this moment represents the Palestinians. PLA itself is also worried because having launched 2 intifadas, now they want to take the peace route, but you know that also doesn't seem to be working, and they are losing their territory to Israeli settlements in the West Bank. It's a very difficult situation even for PLA.
Thank you for
I have a
that.
question, please.
Go ahead. Who had a question?
Go
ahead.
for
Aminul.
yeah,
Thank you.
Mr. Chaudhry. I'm from Bangladesh. Yeah, Aminul Karim. Why are you calling the Hamas the non-state actor? They live in their own territory. This is Palestine. Palestine was a state before 1948, 45, and they are fighting for their own country. And the two-state solution has been accepted broadly by the world at large. And there was an agreement, Oslo agreement. And finally, you are talking about the internal democracy within the Palestinian people. So how do non-state actors are basically guerrilla forces coming from outside, or ragtag army? They are not ragtag army. They're fighting for their own motherland. And if you give in this way, then the question of two-state solution will be just shelved indefinitely, and the world will keep quiet. Now the Trump is in administration, things might change after 4 years. So I'm just objecting to the use of this word non-state actor for the Hamas. Your comments, sir. Yeah.
No problem. As I indicated to, it started its life as a non-state actor, but in 2006 it got elected representative of the Gazan people. So it becomes a sort of unique status for it, because it started its life as a non-state actor, but now it is a representative of the Gazan people, but not a recognized representative of the Palestinian people as a whole, something that PLA does.
So the concept of so the Palestine have a seat in the UN, but it's not accepted as a sovereign state. So what will be the status then in that case? I can't really figure out, because it's not a sovereign state, it's not a UN member per se, but still it has a seat in the UN body, and it has missions in many of the countries, and there is a worldwide acceptance of two-state solution. And America had almost made it when Yasser Arafat was alive. And if we buy the ideas of the Israelis, then the world is giving in to the going against the rule-based order. Is that fine from normative point of view? I'm talking about absolutely. You might say I'm little off the track from the realistic world. No, but then we can't give in to the the coercive powers of the Israeli military might.
If I may, following the Oslo Accords of 1993, which was between the Israeli government and the Palestinian Authority, PLO, Arafat, Palestine became recognized as autonomous Palestine at the time, including West Bank and Gaza. And as the ambassador mentioned, Gaza had the Intifada, and then right after the first Intifada, you had the second one, and then you had the rise of the Hamas in Gaza, and then the elections that the ambassador mentioned. So in terms of international law, they have not achieved statehood in either West Bank or Gaza. They have achieved a status of autonomy, autonomous Palestine. And because the conflict has not resolved the permanent status issues yet, which all the previous peace processes have kind of kicked the can down the road of those permanent status issues, this is why the two-state solution or even one-state solution remain unresolved. And those permanent status issues include things like definitive borders for a future Palestinian state and Israel. You have to resolve the issue of the status of Jerusalem, the return of refugees, Jewish settlements. These are the permanent status issues that remain unresolved. And until they get resolved between the two parties, and now we have three because we have Hamas in Gaza, and they're not going to be erased because they're weakened, but not erased. The Israelis tried to do the same thing with the PLO in the past before Oslo. They kept saying, we're going to erase PLO and Arafat. They were not successful in doing so. They weakened them at times. But it's the same thing. It's back to what I said. It's the repetition of history in a different context and sometimes with different players. So that, to answer your question, the current status is autonomous Palestine. They want to achieve statehood, but they cannot, both sides cannot do that until they resolve the permanent status issues.
I agree, Dr. Hayat. My point is, this has been imposed. What I'm saying, you have not given statehood to Palestine is imposed. Israel has not honored a single Security Council resolution so far.
Yeah, but in the, yes, sir, you're right. But at the Oslo Accords, the Palestinian side under Arafat, the PA, what became the Palestinian Authority, they signed off on the Oslo Accord. And the subsequent agreements as well, the Camp David II and so forth, they signed off on it. So, behind the scenes, was there coercion or wheeling and dealing? I would say more wheeling and dealing than coercion, but yes, they signed off on it. So third parties, fourth parties, peripheral groups, or world powers, they did not put a gun to someone's head and said, sign off on it, right?
Okay. There's no end in discussing this point. Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Absolutely. And then-
Alvi.
Thank you both for that nice exchange and clarification. Yeah, there is no end to discussing this point, and there's no end to discussing this topic, unfortunately. We can go on and on and on. There are so many angles and so many perceptions. The hour, and I'd like to just wrap up with final comments. And if each of you esteemed panelists could just.
Rachelle, pardon me for interruption. Can we take the last question? I guess there's a
Sure.
hand.
Who has the last question?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm not
yeah.
seeing the hands up. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I am Ahmad Naseem from Pakistan. My question to the panel is, what is going to happen in case we have some kind of a solution where status quo prevails and there is some reconstruction going on and Gazans are allowed to live in the land where they are right now? What's going to happen after that? I mean, if it's going to be again an open air prison where people's rights are suppressed, and what is Hamas? I mean, Hamas, where did they come from? You put 2 million plus people in an open air prison, and right now the population over there, almost everybody has lost someone very close to them. Somebody has lost his family, somebody has lost his parents, children. So there are going to be youngsters who are going to feel this pain for the rest of their lives, and they are going to stand up against the oppressor. So whether you call them Hamas or whether you call them freedom fighters or whether you call them anybody. So what is going to happen if we have this kind of reconstruction and Gaza seems the way it was before October 7th? Thank you.
In my view, it'll be a continuation of the status quo. And again, like I said in my opening remarks, a repetition of the same thing, maybe a different dynamic, but a repetition of the same thing, because those principal issues of the permanent status issues that I listed earlier, they have remained unresolved. You're right that the anger is going to create more intense hatred on both sides, because don't forget that on the Israeli side, there's a lot of anger and hatred to the point where because of the hostages and casualties on their side from October 7th, there have been divisions on the Israeli side. Some have called for a complete erasure or elimination of Gaza completely. And even some have called for complete peace and dignity and reconciliation on both sides. So we see those divisions, but what we really need to pay attention to are the internal politics. Internal politics on the Gaza side with Hamas or whatever remains of it and how they regroup, the internal politics of the PA side in West Bank, the internal politics on the Netanyahu side, because Netanyahu does not enjoy unity in Israel, and the internal politics on the United States side, and the very deep divisions within the American politics here in the United States, either pro or against Trump, relative to this issue and many others as well, including the Ukraine-Russia issue. So internal politics on the side of all of these governments and countries and entities don't rule out what kind of role those internal politics play in what happens next.
Thank you, Doctor. Are there any more questions?
Well, my brief comment to Air Commodore Naseem's point is as to what will happen if the status quo prevails. My sense is that this open air prison will continue with Israel unleashing even more atrocities and with impunity. I mean, not much happening against it. And that's a very, very sad situation because the Gazans have lost so much already. And if that continues to happen, it will be a big blot on the conscience of the world community itself. For decades, people will not be able to forget that we revived the Mongol Khan period and killed these people, armless and helpless people, and they were killed and butchered. So this same open air prison with much more atrocious atrocities being committed on them will continue.
Thank you. Ambassador Anil, any final comments?
Well, I think this is a very unfortunate situation which is being allowed to persist um, simply because the international community has not risen to the occasion and continues to remain divided on how to approach it. As has been mentioned by everyone, that if the status quo continues, we are going to see the repeat of it. And I go a step further. I say, if suppose this time there is ceasefire, reconstruction, and everything, the fundamental issue is what about the Palestinian state? Now, as long as that is not resolved, we will continue to see the repeat of these kind of things. So it's important that sufficient attention by the major powers. Of course, Russia is distracted. China is trying to have its own thing. The Americans are also having different views, but they need to come together. It is not for small countries, the regional countries, to resolve it. They are so. It is only the big powers who have to come in and in an honest manner. Then only you will see the cessation of hostility and some kind of modus vivendi among all of them.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? I'd just like to end quickly by asking you all for a brief, if you had the chance to sit down with both the Israeli and Palestinian Authority, or even the American administration, what would be your piece of advice at this juncture in history? Let me start with with Ambassador Aizaz Chaudhry, please.
Well, you're asking me to give a comment?
Yes. Well, what would you be your advice as a former ambassador? What would be your advice at this juncture in time to both the Israelis and the Palestinians forward?
I would say that we are not living in a state of jungle. There has to be certain rules of the game. Now, countless times the United Nations General Assembly, United Nations Security Council has spoken, and Israel should not repeat what happened to them during the Holocaust. They should not do the things that put to shame their own people who had faced this thing. And therefore, they might, take heed from the world community's repeated voices that there should be a two-state solution, that these people also have a right to self-determine their own destiny. And to the Palestinians, I would say that you should also, in a democratic way, try to inculcate more unity, because with two, factions following very different approaches, I don't think Hamas asked or took into confidence the PA on its October 7 attack. And if they continue to move, pretty much on their own, then naturally the consequences of what they do is borne by the whole Palestinian issue. And ultimate solution has to be, some kind of give and take. And so that would be my advice to both, that a compromise is not dishonorable. A compromise is actually more honorable because it saves lives.
Thank you. Dr. Alvi, any final?
I have a very cynical approach to this, and I wish I had the ambassador's optimism, but I think whatever I would say to them would be moot, because they have their own agendas. Netanyahu, who is he? What is his personal agenda? What are the agendas of the people around him? PA and Hamas, what are their agendas? And even Trump and the United States, Saudi Arabia, Iran, all of these players, and Jordan and so forth. Don't forget, we have a new regime in Syria, and the balance of power has shifted there from the Alawites to a pretty extremist Sunni, Ahmad Ashara or Julani, if you want to call him that. his nom de guerre. So, you know, that what their agendas are plays a major part on in terms of how things materialize on the ground and in political decisions. So I don't think they're going to listen to little old me. So I'll leave it at that. But thank you for asking.
Thank you. And last but not least, Ambassador Anil, final words.
Well, I think that optimism should be met with action and some sanity in their discourse for their own future generations. I mean, otherwise, Palestinians, Israelis have fought for 100 years, they'll continue to fight for 100 years, and it's not going anywhere. It is for both sides have to learn to adjust, live with each other. And I believe there is a large constituency in Israel which also wants to live peacefully with the Palestinians. The Hamas will have to change its course like the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, like Fatah, that they recognize the right of Israel to exist, avoid terrorism. Israel will have to give in to the aspirations of the Palestinian peoples and help them rather than stopping even humanitarian supplies. That doesn't work. So far, Israel has adopted a certain approach, which has not yielded anything except grabbing some land and more insecurity for themselves. So they need to think for their own welfare, for their own future. And the Americans, I would say that
just say one
they have
sentence.
a
One moment, please.
greater duty to really do something about it.
Thank you, Ambassador. Yes.
Yeah,
I
would, from my side, I would not give any advice to the Israelis. But I only advise the Hamas and the Palestinian people to unite and go for democracy. And I would tend to say that the October 7 attack by Hamas was a very well ill-planned program. They did not foresee the consequences. And I wish there were presidents like President Carter and President Clinton in America once again, who can come and broker some kind of deal. And the idea of the two-state solution should never be extinguished from the psyche of the world. It should be there in the UN Security Council or elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, thank you all. I think we should stop here in respect for everybody's time. And this was a very insightful discussion. I appreciate your time and your input. And Indu, I don't know how you feel, but I think we needed a round two. There's so much to cover. But we hope that the reconstruction of Gaza becomes a reality, and we hope for a two-state solution, and we hope that people, Israelis and Palestinians alike, will enjoy equal rights and opportunities in that land. So until then, thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you.
And
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Indu.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Indu. All the best. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.